The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, flickering just enough to make shadows dance along the beige walls of the Foster office. Mara Ellison sat on a chair too tall for her, legs dangling uselessly, her small hands gripping the edge like a lifeline. She wore a faded pink hoodie 2 sizes too big, the sleeves covering her fingers as if hiding from the world. Around her, adults whispered in low tones, the words overlapping like static. But Mara didn't hear any of it, not really. Not since the night everything changed. Not since the sirens shattered the calm of Willow Bend, a town where everyone's business was everyone's business, where the kind of secrets that could get buried in other places lingered, waiting for a spark. That spark had been a gunshot, or maybe several, and a scream that no 7-year-old should have had to hear. Mara hadn't spoken a full sentence since then. Not to her foster parents, not to social workers, not to the officers who tried with gentle voices and empty promises. She had spoken only to her sketches, to the blank page of a notebook where she drew the things she could not name, the shapes of fear, the outlines of shadows, the figures of people she remembered in fragments. The office smelled faintly of coffee, disinfectant, and the low, iron-like scent of old paper. Mara's legs swung back and forth, hitting the chair legs with soft thuds, a metronome counting the seconds in a room that felt too big and too loud. She had been told she would be a witness in a case, but the word didn't mean anything to her. Adults tossed it around like a shiny toy, but it wasn't a toy. It wasn't real. She just knew that people in suits and badges looked at her as though she held the key to something terrible. She did, but she didn't know how to open it. The door opened, and a new presence entered the room, a figure taller than the social worker, broader than any of the foster parents Mara had seen, but gentle in a way that didn't make her flinch. Ranger, a black and tan German shepherd with eyes sharp as flint and fur that shimmered even in the fluorescent glare, padded in. His paws made soft, deliberate sounds against the linoleum floor. Mara's heart skipped a beat, a rhythm her chest hadn't felt in months. She had never met him, but something about him called to her, something she couldn't name, but instinct told her she could trust him. Officer Joel Baxter, Ranger's handler, trailed behind, clipboard in hand, looking nervous. Mara noticed the subtle tension in his shoulders, the way he tried to mask it with professional composure. Something about him was different. She didn't know why, but she sensed it. The room fell quiet as Ranger approached Mara, stopping just short of the chair. His ears perked, tail lowering but not fully relaxed. He tilted his head, studying her as though trying to read the lines of her small face, the tight grip of her hands, the way her body seemed to curl inward. Mara looked back at him, and for the first time that day, she felt a tiny thread of something she hadn't felt in months: safety. She slid from the chair, feet hitting the floor with a quiet thump, and knelt in front of Ranger. He sniffed her hands, then her hoodie, then her hair, as if gathering every piece of information her body could offer. Her fingers moved to her sketchbook, which she had tucked under her arm like a shield. She flipped it open, showing Ranger a page she had drawn weeks ago. A child and a dog, small figures in a room with windows blacked out, a shape in the corner outlined but unfilled. She pointed to the dog, then whispered something barely audible, a string of words she hadn't spoken aloud to any human in months. Ranger's reaction was instantaneous. His body stiffened, every muscle taut. He let out a low growl that wasn't threatening but alert, a warning of recognition. Baxter's eyes widened. He knelt beside Mara, voice trembling just slightly. "Mara, what did you say to him?" Mara didn't answer. Instead, she pointed to the 2 stick figures in the corner of her sketchbook, the larger holding something that looked like a flashlight, except the end was shaded black. Her small lips quivered, but no sound came out. She touched Ranger's nose, and the dog pressed his head into her palm, eyes never leaving the drawing. Baxter swallowed hard. Something about this reaction didn't make sense. Ranger had been trained to recognize specific commands, signals that only officers in certain operations knew. And Mara had never been in any operation. And yet, The social worker, a woman named Lisa Trent, leaned closer, her voice gentle. "Officer Baxter, is he reacting to her?" Baxter's throat felt dry. He shook his head quickly, forcing a smile he didn't feel. "No, just old training cues. He's alert, that's all." But Ranger's gaze remained locked on Mara, and the growl deepened. Not at her, not at Baxter, but something else, something unseen. Mara's fingers trembled. She opened her mouth to speak, then stopped. She closed it again, curling inward, but then, almost imperceptibly, whispered two words. Baxter froze. The room seemed to stop breathing. Those two words, the ones no child should have known, were words from an operation long buried in classified files, words that hadn't been spoken outside law enforcement circles. The dog reacted immediately. He barked once, a sharp sound, and backed away from Mara, not in fear but in recognition, as though acknowledging an old truth. He then sat rigidly, eyes wide and fixed on her. Baxter's stomach dropped. He hadn't seen Ranger react like this in years. That command wasn't supposed to exist in the civilian world. Yet here it was, coming from a 7-year-old girl who hadn't spoken to anyone in months. The social worker gasped. What did you just say to him?" Mara only looked at her sketchbook, trembling. She traced the outlines of the figures with her finger. Then she whispered 3 more words, so low Baxter had to lean in to hear. "He knows him." The room went silent. Baxter felt the blood drain from his face. Who did the dog know? Every adult in that room felt the sudden weight of the unknown press against their chest. Mara, tiny and trembling, seemed to shrink into herself, yet her eyes were alight with something, fear, yes, but also a knowledge no one else could touch. Ranger whimpered softly and leaned into Mara, his body vibrating with alert energy. Baxter knelt beside her, whispering, "It's okay, Mara, it's okay. Tell me what you mean." But Mara didn't answer. She only hugged the dog, and in that instant, the room seemed to understand something unspoken. Mara held a secret that could unravel everything everyone thought they knew about the night that shattered her world. And outside the window, unseen by any adult in the room, the wind stirred. Something or someone watched the office from across the street, silent and patient, waiting. Because the moment Mara had whispered those words to Ranger, the first piece of a puzzle no one was prepared for had fallen into place. And no one, not Baxter, not the social worker, not even Mara herself, could yet guess how far the consequences would reach. Officer Joel Baxter sat alone in his patrol car after the meeting with the social worker. The rain pelted the windshield in heavy sheets, distorting the amber glow of the streetlights into blurry streaks. He gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white, staring at Mara's two words replaying in his mind like a broken record. He knows him. He had seen Ranger react to commands before, of course. That was his job. Years of training, countless operations, each built on precision and trust between man and dog. But Mara's whispered words had triggered something different, a response Baxter had never witnessed. Ranger's body had tensed, eyes wide, growl low and deliberate, a reaction that wasn't just obedience. It was recognition. Recognition of a command that had been retired years ago. A command Baxter had sworn never to speak again, one that had only existed during a covert operation that had gone sideways, a botched raid that had nearly ended his career and left a stain on the department that no one talked about. And now, a 7-year-old girl, silent for months, had spoken it without understanding it, without even knowing its significance. Baxter's stomach churned. How would she know? He replayed the night over and over in his mind. The sirens, the shadows moving through the trailer, the flashes of light against the walls, the scream that would haunt him forever. Mara had been there. She had seen things no child should see. And the more he thought about it, the more he realized that those two words, innocent as they might have seemed, weren't just words. They were evidence. They were a signal. And they were dangerous. He rubbed his face and tried to focus. Baxter had to tell someone. He drove through the rain-slicked streets, heading for the courthouse where County Prosecutor Elena Ruiz's office waited. She had been building the case against Chuck Redden, the man accused of running a weapons operation in Willow Bend, for months. Mara was supposed to be the key witness, the fragile link that could finally put Redden behind bars, but now Baxter feared that link might be compromised. He stepped into the office, shaking off the rain, and found Ruiz hunched over a pile of folders, scanning documents with her usual intensity. The room smelled of paper, coffee, and something tangibly urgent, an aroma that always preceded a case turning ugly. "Joel," she said without looking up, "what's wrong?" He closed the door and leaned against it. "It's Mara." Ruiz raised an eyebrow. "I just saw her. She's silent but calm for a change. That's progress." Baxter shook his head. "It's not progress, it's a warning." He dropped into a chair, rubbing his temples. She whispered 2 words to Ranger, words he shouldn't have reacted to, words from an operation that's been classified for years, words that only certain officers, people involved in that operation, would know. Ruiz froze, finally looking at him, her eyes narrowed, sharp and calculating. What do you mean? What operation?" "The Keller raid, 5 years ago. It went wrong, and now those words, Mara knew them. She said them to Ranger and the dog reacted like he recognized something dangerous." Ruiz's fingers clenched around her pen. "You're telling me Mara knows more than we thought, that somehow she's connected to what?" She hesitated, almost afraid to say it. "Someone involved in the operation." Baxter swallowed hard. "I don't know who, but Ranger's reaction, it wasn't obedience. It was recognition. And the only way that happens is if the dog knew the person, the command, or both. And Mara knows them too." Ruiz leaned back in her chair, exhaling sharply. "That's impossible. She's a child. She doesn't even talk. She can't know what you're saying." "Yet she did," Baxter said, his voice low. "And now we have a problem. If whoever she recognized is still active, still connected to Redden, if they know she's our witness," he trailed off. The thought alone sent chills down his spine. Mara wasn't just a witness anymore, she was a target. Ruiz's eyes darkened. "You're saying we've been building this case blind, trusting that our key witness wasn't compromised. But if she's seen the wrong person or the right person in the wrong place, then everything we've done, everything we've planned could collapse, and she's 7 years old." Baxter nodded grimly. "Exactly. And we need to protect her, not just physically but mentally. The last thing we want is her breaking under pressure and saying the wrong thing, or worse, someone finding out she knows more than we realized." Ruiz leaned forward, voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Joel, tell me everything. Start from the beginning." He recounted the scene. Mara in the Foster office, the sketchbook, the figures, Ranger's reaction, the whispered words. Ruiz listened silently, pen poised over her notebook, occasionally jotting down details that would matter later. By the time he finished, the room felt heavy, almost suffocating, the air thick with unspoken danger. "We have a leak," Ruiz said finally, her voice hard. "Someone inside law enforcement, or someone trained by us, is still in play. Mara saw something she shouldn't have, and she used Ranger to tell us." Baxter's heart pounded. "That's what I'm saying, and we have no idea who." The room went quiet, each of them grappling with the magnitude of what they'd uncovered. Then Baxter added something he hadn't told anyone else yet. "There's one more thing. Mara," she whispered a third phrase, 3 words. I almost didn't hear them, but she said, he leaned in. "He knows him." Ruiz's pen froze. "He knows him." "Yes," Baxter said. That's all she said, but Ranger reacted. He stiffened, growled. He didn't move toward Mara. He moved toward something else, something she's afraid of. Ruiz's fingers tapped the desk, a rapid staccato of thought and urgency. "Joel, if that's true, if someone she saw that night is still around, still in power, then this case is bigger than Redden. Much bigger. This could go all the way to the top of the department." Baxter nodded. "I know, And Mara, she's our only lead, but she won't talk to anyone else. Not even me, not yet. She trusts Ranger more than anyone, and right now that's her lifeline." Ruiz leaned back, running her hands over her face. "We need to protect her, and we need to find out exactly what she knows without putting her in more danger. If anyone outside these walls learns she's aware of the truth," she shook her head, "they'll come for her, and we won't see it coming." Baxter's stomach tightened. "That's exactly what I'm afraid of. Mara isn't just a witness anymore, she's the key. And whoever she recognized, if they realize she's alive, they'll stop at nothing." A thunderclap rattled the windows, punctuating the tension in the room. Baxter stared out into the stormy night, rain lashing against the glass like a warning. Somewhere out there, someone was moving, waiting, watching, and they had already failed once before. Ruiz broke the silence. "We can't tell anyone else yet, no other officers, not the press, not Redden's lawyers. If anyone suspects Mara knows more than she should, they'll act. This has to be contained, controlled. And you have to stay close to her, always. Ranger too, they are our shield right now." Baxter nodded. "I'll do it, whatever it takes." The two sat in silence for a moment, the rain pounding against the roof like a drumbeat of urgency. Baxter's mind raced. Mara was small, vulnerable, but she was also braver than most adults he had met. And she had something no one else could understand, a connection with Ranger that went beyond commands and training. She had found a way to communicate with the one being who could perceive the danger before any human could. And that realization sent a chill down his spine. Because if Mara could see it and Ranger could sense it, then maybe, just maybe, they could stop what was coming next. But Baxter knew, deep down, that the storm was only beginning. Somewhere in the shadows of Willow Bend, someone was already moving to silence the girl who knew too much, and they would not fail. The question was, could Baxter and Ruiz reach her before it was too late? And Mara, did she even know what danger truly meant? As the car's windshield wipers cut through the sheets of rain, Baxter realized one thing. The case wasn't just about catching a criminal anymore. It was about keeping a tiny girl alive. And the clock was ticking. Alina Ruiz had spent the last 3 months building a case she thought would bring Willow Bend a measure of justice. Chuck Redden, the man every parent whispered about, every teenager feared, the man who had skirted the law for years, had finally been cornered. Her team had meticulously pieced together the weapons pipeline, the smuggling routes, the shell companies that Redden used to launder his profits. But everything hinged on one thing: Mara Ellison. The little girl had been silent, yes, but she had sketches and she had memory, and Alina had believed that even the faintest hint of recognition from Mara could tip the scales. But now, after Baxter's call, everything was unraveling. Mara's whispered words to "knows him" haunted Alina like a specter. Words a 7-year-old should never know. Words that meant someone in the case was not who they claimed to be. Words that could destroy months of work. Alina leaned back in her chair, rubbing her temples as Baxter recounted every detail. The sketch, the stick figures, the 2 words, the dog's reaction. Her mind raced, linking fragments she hadn't considered before. "That command hasn't existed since the Keller raid," Baxter said. His voice was tight, tense. "The only people who knew it were officers involved in the operation, and anyone they trained." Alina froze. She could feel the panic curling in her stomach. "The only people," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You're saying it's possible someone in law enforcement is involved?" Baxter nodded grimly. "I'm afraid so." The weight of that realization hit her like a punch to the chest. Weeks of testimony, of planning the courtroom strategy, of preparing witnesses, now seemed meaningless. If Mara had seen something, someone she shouldn't have, the case against Redden was compromised. And worse, if the person Mara had recognized was still active, still in power, then the danger wasn't just about losing the case. It was about the girl herself. Alina slammed her notebook shut. "This changes everything. We can't move forward with Redden yet. Not until we know exactly who Mara saw, who the dog recognized, and what she actually knows. If we don't, and he knows Mara is our witness, she trailed off, the implication so terrifying she couldn't finish the sentence. Baxter rubbed his face, his mind running through the possibilities. Mara had been silent for months, yet she had found a way to communicate something crucial, something adults had missed. She had whispered to Ranger and the dog had understood. That level of understanding and danger was beyond any normal case. Alina stood abruptly, packing the office like a caged tiger. We need to protect her, not just physically but mentally. If Mara breaks under pressure, if she's manipulated, or if someone gets close to her, she swallowed hard. We could lose everything. Baxter nodded. I've already moved her to a safe house. Ranger's with her. She trusts him more than anyone else right now. Alina stopped packing, staring at him. Joel, she's 7 years old. 7. And she's already seen things that would traumatize an adult. And now you're telling me she's aware that someone in authority, someone trained, maybe even someone we trust, is involved. Yes, Baxter said simply. And Mara knows. She just doesn't know how to tell us in words. Alina's hands clenched into fists. We've been building this case for months, Joel. Every affidavit, every witness statement, every single piece of evidence depends on Mara. And now, I don't know if we can trust it. I don't know if we can trust anyone. Baxter's stomach sank. He knew the feeling all too well, the kind of fear that left you sleepless, that left your hands trembling even when your body was still. Mara was small, fragile, but her mind was sharp. She remembered everything, and that made her dangerous. To the criminals, yes, but also to anyone who wanted to control the narrative. Alina ran her hands over her face, exhaling sharply. We need to figure out who she saw, and we need to do it fast. If Mara's life is at risk, if the wrong people realize she knows. Her voice dropped to a whisper, barely audible over the hum of the office lights. We're done. The case, the town, everything. Baxter leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. I know, and that's why Mara and Ranger can't be separated. She trusts him more than anyone else right now. He's her shield and her voice. If we lose that, we lose her. Alina shook her head, packing again. We can't tell anyone else yet. Not the press, not the officers, not directly involved, not Redden's lawyers. If anyone suspects she knows more than she should, they'll move and we won't be able to stop them. This has to be contained, controlled. And you have to stay close to her, always. Ranger too. They are our only protection right now. Baxter nodded, understanding the gravity of the responsibility on his shoulders. Mara was tiny, but she was more than just a witness. She was a living repository of truth. And truth, in Willow Bend, was dangerous. Alina's gaze sharpened, her voice cold and precise. Joel, if Mara says the wrong thing at the wrong time, or if anyone figures out she knows more than she's letting on, it's not just the case that's at risk. It's her life. And we can't afford mistakes. Not now, not ever. The rain outside the courthouse windows intensified, each thunderclap resonating like a warning. Baxter stared out at the storm, feeling its pulse in his chest. He knew that somewhere, someone was already moving. Someone who had noticed Mara's 2 words, someone who understood the implications. And he knew they wouldn't hesitate. Alina's voice brought him back to the room. Joel, we need answers, and we need them now. Mara isn't just a witness anymore, she's a target. And if we don't act quickly, her words trailed off, the threat unspoken but hanging heavy in the air. Baxter swallowed hard, the weight of responsibility pressing down on him like a physical force. He had to protect Mara, yes, but he also had to uncover the truth. The person Mara had recognized could be anyone, an officer, a criminal, someone long thought loyal, someone capable of hiding in plain sight. And time was running out. He thought of Mara's small face, the tremble of her lips, the way she clung to Ranger as if he were the only solid thing in the world. She was fragile. She was frightened. And she held secrets that could topple a life, a department, a town. Baxter realized with a cold clarity that this case was no longer about justice or prosecution. It was about survival, hers, the dog's, and maybe his own. Alina paced once more, stopping at the window, staring out at the storm. We'll need to dig into the department, quietly, carefully. If there's someone in our ranks involved, if Mara saw them, we need to find out before they find us, before they find her. Baxter nodded again, knowing the truth of her words. I'll start tonight. I'll check every lead, every connection, every possible link. I'll keep her safe, I promise. Alina turned to face him, her eyes hard. Joel, I hope you understand what this means. One wrong move, one mistake, and Mara dies. And no case, no victory, no badge will mean anything. The room fell silent. Outside, the storm battered the city, each flash of lightning illuminating the worry etched into their faces. Baxter's hands tightened on his knees. Mara's 2 words had opened a door to a truth no one was ready to confront. And behind that door, danger waited. Somewhere in the shadows of Willow Bend, someone was already moving, watching, planning. And Mara didn't know just how deep the storm had already reached. Baxter leaned back, staring at the ceiling, his mind racing. The girl who wouldn't speak had just changed everything. And the question that haunted him more than any thunderclap outside was this. Who was she whispering about? The safe house sat on the far edge of Willow Bend, a modest 2-story home tucked behind overgrown hedges, its windows darkened by heavy curtains. The storm had intensified as night fell, lightning splitting the sky into jagged shards of white, thunder following with a growl that rattled the walls. Inside, Mara Ellison sat curled on a worn couch. Ranger pressed to her side, his massive body warm and steady, the only solid presence she trusted in a world that had betrayed her. Officer Joel Baxter moved quietly around the room, checking locks and windows, ensuring that every point of entry was secure. He had promised Alina Ruiz he would stay close to Mara, and he meant it. Every shadow seemed to move with intent. Every gust of wind felt like a predator stalking them. Mara's whispered words to Ranger earlier that day had set a chain of events in motion, and Baxter couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Joel, Mara's voice was a small tremor, barely audible over the storm. She clutched Ranger's fur, pressing her face against his side. I don't want him to come. Baxter knelt beside her, resting a hand on her shoulder. No one's going to hurt you, Mara. Ranger and I are right here, I promise. But the girl's eyes, wide and terrified, betrayed her. She had seen too much, remembered too much, and she had spoken words to a dog that no adult could understand. Words that had already started to ripple through hidden channels of danger. The lights flickered once, twice, and then died. Darkness swallowed the safe house whole. The storm outside roared like a living thing, rain hammering the roof, wind tugging at the walls, carrying the smell of wet earth and ozone. Mara shrieked softly, pressing closer to Ranger. It's okay, Baxter murmured, fumbling for his flashlight. He clicked it on, sweeping the beam across the room. The shadows danced across the walls, monstrous in the flickering light. Stay close to me. Stay close to Ranger. Ranger stiffened immediately, ears erect, muscles coiled like springs. He let out a low, threatening growl, eyes fixed on the front door. Baxter's pulse quickened. He had never seen the dog react with such intensity inside a secured building. Something was outside, something Mara had sensed even before Baxter did. Then came the first thud, heavy, deliberate, reverberating through the floor. Baxter froze, heart hammering. Did you hear that? He whispered. Mara nodded, silent, wide-eyed, gripping Ranger's fur with desperate fingers. She whispered 2 words again, barely audible. He's here. The hairs on Baxter's neck stood on end. Mara had said those words before, but this time there was certainty in her tone, a recognition that chilled him to the bone. Ranger growled again, louder, moving to position himself between Mara and the front door. Baxter whispered urgently, Stay behind me, Mara. Don't move. He moved toward the door, hand on his sidearm, flashlight in the other. He scanned the windows and hedges, every dark corner of the property. The rain pounded so hard it masked some sounds but exaggerated others. Every creak of the house amplified into a warning. Another thud, closer this time. The door rattled, a soft but deliberate push like someone testing it. Baxter froze, listening to the storm, listening to Mara's shallow breathing, listening to Ranger's growl vibrating through the floorboards. Then he heard it, a whisper of movement on the porch. Heavy boots wet with rain. Someone was standing there, silent, watching, calculating. "Joel," Mara whispered again. Her tiny voice trembled, but there was resolve in it, a clarity he hadn't heard before. "Ranger, don't let him." Baxter felt his pulse spike. This wasn't just a break-in. Whoever was outside knew about Mara, knew the dog, knew exactly what he could do, and they weren't testing the door, they were waiting for him to make a mistake. He whispered back, "Ranger, get ready." The dog's body tensed, growl now low and warning, eyes locked on the front door. Mara pressed closer to him, tiny hands gripping his fur as if she could anchor herself to his strength. A shadow moved past the frosted glass panel in the door. Baxter's flashlight caught the outline, tall, broad hat pulled low, rain dripping from the brim. He froze. His mind raced. That shape, he had seen it before in files, in reports, in nightmares he tried to bury, but now it was here. Ranger lunged. The dog shot forward with a growl that seemed to shake the walls. Mara screamed, not in fear but in warning, and Baxter's heart stopped when the figure raised a hand, palm out, a command whispered under the storm's fury. Ranger froze mid-lunge, every muscle rigid but unmoving. Baxter recognized the movement, the forbidden command. A command that should have had no effect, a command that only elite officers, long retired or rogue, had known. The figure stepped closer, voice low, calm, almost casual. "You should not be here." Baxter's mind spun. Who knew that command? Who would dare? Mara clutched Ranger tighter, whispering again, her words barely audible. "No, don't." Lightning split the sky, illuminating the figure for a brief second. Tall, wet, hat low, eyes shadowed but intent. Then another flash and he was gone, slipping back into the shadows, leaving the door slightly ajar, the storm swallowing his retreat. Baxter's hands shook as he closed and locked the door, sliding the bolt into place. Ranger whined softly, lowering to Mara's side, but every muscle in the dog's body remained tense. Mara, trembling, hugged Ranger tightly, whispering two words over and over. "He's here." Baxter sank to the floor beside them, voice low and urgent. "Mara, listen to me. We're safe, for now, but we need to be ready. You have to stay close to Ranger. I'll stay with you." The girl nodded, tiny shoulders rising and falling, wet hair plastered to her forehead. The storm outside raged like a living thing, shaking the house, rattling the windows, but inside the real storm was silent. Someone had already found Mara. Someone had already started to move. Baxter realized that this was no ordinary threat. This wasn't a criminal showing up to intimidate a witness. This was someone trained, someone patient, someone who knew exactly how to manipulate a 7-year-old girl and the dog who protected her. He glanced at Mara's sketchbook, lying open on the floor. Pages of stick figures, windows, doors, and shapes outlined in black. She had seen the intruder long before Baxter had even sensed him, and she had already tried to warn Ranger. A flash of realization hit Baxter like lightning itself. Mara wasn't just scared. She understood danger on a level he hadn't anticipated. She had seen the figure before. She knew him, and Ranger had recognized him too. That night the safe house wasn't safe. Not really. Somewhere beyond the storm, someone waited, patient, watching, knowing that every movement, every sound, every whispered word might give them away, or might seal Mara's fate. Baxter hugged Mara tightly, whispering, "It's okay, I've got you. Ranger's got you. Nobody's getting to you tonight." But as he spoke, a shiver ran through his spine. He knew it was only a matter of time before the storm outside, and the storm approaching from inside, would reach them. And Mara, tiny, trembling, holding a dog as if he were the only shield between her and the world, whispered again into the shadows. "He's here." Outside, the rain fell harder. The night waited, and the person in the hat somewhere moved silently, calculating their next move. The storm outside had reached a frenzy, slamming rain against the safe house like fists, wind tearing at the trees and sending shadows dancing across the walls. Inside, Mara Ellison clutched Ranger tightly, the dog's warm, solid body a bulwark against the fear clawing at her chest. Officer Joel Baxter crouched nearby, every sense on high alert, every muscle coiled as though the next movement could mean life or death. Then, as if materializing from the storm itself, the front door creaked. Just a slow, deliberate shift in the old wood, accompanied by the subtle scrape of heavy boots on the porch. Baxter's pulse hammered in his chest. Ranger's growl rose into a low snarl, ears pinned forward, teeth bared. Mara's tiny fingers tightened around the dog's fur. She whispered, barely audible, "He's here." Lightning split the sky, illuminating the doorway for the briefest instant. A tall figure appeared, rain streaming off his hat, shoulders broad, movements controlled, deliberate. He stopped at the threshold, silent, surveying the room with a predator's focus. Every instinct Baxter had screamed at him to react immediately, but something about the figure froze him in place. "Stay back," Baxter said, voice steady but firm. He raised his flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness. "Hands where I can see them." The man didn't move, didn't speak, only tilted his hat slightly, letting the dim light graze a face partially obscured in shadow. Baxter noticed the calm certainty in the man's stance, the confidence of someone used to controlling every situation. Ranger lunged, a living barrier between Mara and the intruder. His growl deepened, low and threatening. Mara shouted, almost a warning to the dog, "No, wait." Baxter's heart skipped. Mara's tiny voice had stopped Ranger mid-lunge. The dog froze, body tense but unmoving, eyes fixed on the man in the hat. The figure raised one hand, palm outward, and spoke a single word. Baxter flinched. It was the forbidden command, one that should have controlled Ranger instantly. Ranger didn't obey. Not this time. Instead, the dog turned toward Mara, nose to her palm, then back to the intruder, growling and barking with a fury Baxter had never seen. The command had failed. Ranger wasn't controlled. He was protecting Mara and only Mara. The man's eyes narrowed, a flash of irritation crossing his face. "So the dog knows," he said, voice low and calm, almost amused. "And the girl has spoken." Mara's hands trembled as she gripped Ranger's fur tighter. "Go away," she whispered, her voice quivering but firm. "Go away or heal." The man interrupted with a faint chuckle. "Or heal what, little girl?" He took a deliberate step forward, water dripping from his coat. "You've been very quiet, very clever. I have to admit, I didn't expect this." Baxter's gun hand tightened, but he didn't move. Every instinct screamed that the man was dangerous, that he knew things no civilian could. But Mara, tiny, trembling, clutching Ranger, held a power in her hands that Baxter had yet to fully understand. The intruder shifted slightly, tilting his hat back. Lightning flashed again, revealing just enough of his face for Baxter's mind to reel. Recognition struck cold and hard. "He's the same man Mara whispered about, the one from the Keller raid files. The one I thought I'd buried in memory." Baxter's breath caught. Mara's whispered words from before, "He knows him," made sense now. The dog's reaction, the girl's fear, the way she had spoken to Ranger, all of it pointed to the same truth. The man standing at their door had been there the night everything went wrong. The man took another step, calm, deliberate, and raised his hand again. "Tell me, girl, what did you say to the dog?" Mara shook her head, backing up slightly. I can't. You'll come for me." A shadow of a smile crossed the intruder's face. Ah, so you remember. Good, very good. That memory will make this interesting. Ranger barked, leaping forward with the force of his entire body. Baxter shouted, Ranger, no. But the dog didn't attack Mara. He leapt between her and the intruder, snarling and snapping, muscles coiled, fur bristling. This was not aggression, it was protection, instinct sharpened to a lethal edge. The intruder raised his hand again, repeating the forbidden command. Ranger froze for a fraction of a second, just long enough for Baxter's stomach to tighten in fear. But Mara leaned forward, small but defiant, and whispered the two words again, words only Ranger could understand. No fear. The dog lunged, not at Mara, not at Baxter, but at the intruder. Teeth snapped, powerful muscles surged, and the man stumbled back, taken by surprise. Baxter moved, gun raised, but the intruder was fast, agile, and already recovering, eyes flashing with equal measures of anger and respect. You've trained him well, the man said, catching himself against the doorway. But the girl, she's something else entirely. Mara took a step forward, hands still clutching Ranger's fur. You're not going to hurt anyone, not tonight, not ever. Her voice had grown stronger, more certain than Baxter had ever heard. The intruder's expression shifted, almost a glimmer of admiration crossing his features. Clever girl, very clever, but you don't understand the forces you're meddling with. You're tiny, you're fragile, you're nothing in this game. Baxter's jaw tightened. She's not nothing, he said, voice low and furious. She's the one who sees everything you don't. She's the one who stops you. Ranger growled again, circling, teeth bared. Mara whispered once more, her voice steady. He won't touch us. The intruder froze, eyes narrowing at the girl's confidence. He seemed to measure something invisible, assessing the bond between Mara and Ranger. Then, almost reluctantly, he took a step back. You've got spirit, he said finally. I'll give you that, but remember this, every secret has a price. Every witness has a vulnerability, and the night is far from over. Before Baxter could react, the man turned and vanished into the storm, leaving muddy footprints trailing from the doorway, rain dripping from his coat, hat low once more. The door creaked slightly in the wind, but otherwise he was gone. Baxter exhaled slowly, kneeling beside Mara. You okay?" he asked, voice shaking despite himself. Mara nodded, tears streaming down her face, a mix of relief and lingering fear. He'll be back," she whispered. "I saw him. I know he'll come back." Ranger pressed his massive head against her chest, a protective weight that somehow anchored her trembling body. Baxter realized then that Mara's connection with the dog wasn't just training. It was instinct. She had communicated with him in ways that humans couldn't understand, guiding him, controlling the balance of power in the room with words no one else would recognize. The storm outside raged on, but inside the trio sat in tense silence, the realization of what had just happened settling heavily over them. The intruder had known Mara. He had recognized her, and he had tested Ranger to see if the dog would obey the forbidden command. And Mara had stopped him. For now, Baxter understood the truth, cold and hard. The night was far from over. The intruder would return, more determined than ever. And Mara, tiny and trembling but impossibly brave, was the key to everything. He glanced at her, then at Ranger. "We need to be ready," he said quietly. "No one comes in here without knowing exactly what we're capable of. And Mara, you're going to have to trust me completely." Mara nodded, hugging Ranger tighter, whispering the two words again. No fear. Outside, the storm raged on, a world of chaos waiting to descend once more. Inside, Mara, Ranger, and Baxter braced for the next wave, knowing full well that the man in the hat was out there, patient, calculating, and deadly. The night had begun and the game had just started. By dawn, the storm had begun to relent, leaving Willow Bend soaked, streets slick with rain, and the air heavy with the scent of wet earth and ozone. Inside the safe house, Mara Ellison sat cross-legged on the floor, Ranger curled protectively around her. Her small hands trembled as they hovered over her sketchbook. The events of the night had left her exhausted, but a new urgency filled her mind. She had to show them. She had to explain. Officer Joel Baxter and prosecutor Elena Ruiz had both returned after the first tense hours of the storm, moving cautiously, their eyes scanning every shadow. Baxter knelt beside Mara, while Elena crouched opposite, notebook in hand. "Mara," Elena said gently, her voice softer than Baxter's but no less urgent. "We need to understand what you saw. You're safe here. You can tell us everything." Mara's lips trembled, but she shook her head. I don't know if I can," she whispered, voice barely audible. She glanced at Ranger, who nudged her hand with his massive nose as if to say, "You can. You have to." Baxter exhaled, running a hand through his damp hair. "Mara, we can't protect you if we don't know what's happening. You saw something and we need to know. Can you show us in your drawings?" Mara hesitated, then slowly opened her sketchbook. Page after page revealed scenes from the night her world had shattered. The trailer, figures moving in shadows, flashes of light, the faces of people she remembered only in fragments. But one page stopped both Baxter and Elena cold. It was a drawing of the weapons deal, crudely rendered in stick figures and lines, but unmistakable. One figure stood tall, commanding, hat low and face obscured, the man from the safe house. Another figure passed a long, dark shape, which Mara had labeled the package, to a shorter, stockier man who she had drawn holding a briefcase. Baxter's hand shook as he traced the lines. Elena leaned closer, squinting. This is the deal Redden was accused of?" she asked quietly. Mara nodded. "But it was Redden giving orders," she whispered. Her small voice trembled, but her eyes were fierce. "The tall man, the one with the hat, he told the others what to do. He made them leave, made them follow him. He said, if anyone talks about me, they'll come for me." Elena's pen froze above her notebook. "He said that to you?" Mara swallowed hard, nodding. "I heard him, I saw everything. Ranger, he knows him. He knows what the man did." Baxter's stomach sank. The realization hit him like a freight train. The man in the hat, the same one who had threatened them at the safe house, was not just an intruder. He had authority. He had control. He had been inside the operation from the very beginning, orchestrating it all, hidden in plain sight. Elena's hands trembled slightly as she jotted notes. "Joel, this changes everything. We've been prosecuting Redden, but if this man orchestrated the deal, if he commanded the others, then we've been chasing the wrong person. And Mara witnessed it all." Baxter's jaw tightened. "And now he knows she's alive, that she remembers, that she can identify him. He won't stop, not until he silences her." Mara's voice shook, but she was insistent. He's in the police too. I remember badges, uniforms, faces I shouldn't remember. He's still working there." Elena's eyes widened. "Inside the department. That means we can't trust anyone else yet. If Mara's account is accurate, we're dealing with corruption at the highest levels. And Redden might not be the mastermind at all." Baxter ran a hand down his face. "Which means he'll manipulate the case, cover his tracks, and target Mara before we even get a chance to move. We need to act fast." Mara hugged Ranger tightly, whispering her small, resolute words. "No fear." The dog nudged her, a silent promise that he would not let her face this alone. Baxter watched the exchange, struck by the unspoken bond between the girl and the dog. Mara wasn't just a witness. She was a force. A small, fragile, brilliant force that could see truths others overlooked. Elena leaned back, exhaling sharply. "We need to secure her, every document, every sketch, every piece of evidence. This goes beyond Redden, beyond Willow Bend. Whoever that man is, he's a threat to everyone involved. And Mara's life is the key. Protecting her is now our top priority." Baxter nodded. "I've already moved her to a secure location. Ranger stays with her. I'll stay with her too. But we need to understand exactly what she saw, and we need to corroborate it. The sketches, her testimony, they'll be crucial, but they're not enough on their own. Mara's eyes, wide and fearful, met Baxter's. "They'll come for me," she whispered. "If they know I remember, they'll find me." Baxter's heart tightened. "Not if we stop them first, not if we're faster, and Ranger's got your back, always." Ranger nudged Mara's hand, growling softly at the shadows outside the safe house windows. He had sensed it, the lingering presence of the man in the hat. Baxter understood the dog's instincts. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Alina's voice cut through the tension, calm but firm. "We'll need a plan. Quiet, careful, precise. Mara can't speak to anyone else yet. We can't risk leaks, not to the department, not to the press, not to Redden's network. If he suspects she knows more than we realize," she shook her head, "it could be fatal." Baxter's eyes hardened. "Then we move quickly. First, secure Mara. Then verify every person she identified, every face, every name, every badge." Mara watched them, understanding more than they realized. She opened her sketchbook again, flipping to the page with the tall figure. Her small finger traced the outline of the hat. "This one, he's dangerous. He always watches. Even when I think he's gone, he's there, waiting." Baxter's stomach sank. He realized that Mara's instincts were as sharp as any officer's. She had seen too much, remembered too much, and she had a sixth sense for danger that no adult could match. Alina's pen hovered over the notebook, the weight of the case pressing down on her. "Joel, we have to get her into court safely. If Mara can testify about what she saw, about who gave the orders, it could unravel everything. But we can't do it until we know the full picture." Baxter looked at Mara, then at Ranger. "We'll get there, I promise, but we have to be ready. He won't stop, Mara, and he's clever, he's patient, and he won't hesitate to come after you again." Mara hugged Ranger tightly, whispering once more, "No fear." The dog rested his massive head against her chest, a living shield, a promise of protection that transcended words. Outside, the rain had slowed, but the world felt darker, heavier, filled with invisible threats lurking just beyond sight. The man in the hat had been here. He had tested them, observed them, and now he knew. Mara's secret was no longer hers alone. It was a weapon, a truth that could destroy lives, expose corruption, and put her squarely in the path of danger she could not fully comprehend. Baxter's mind raced. He knew the next steps had to be precise. Every movement, every decision, every word had to be calculated. Mara's sketches would guide them, her testimony would lead them, and Ranger would protect them. But the storm outside, and the storm that had already begun inside the walls of Willow Bend, was far from over. And the night Mara had survived was only the beginning. Because the secret she had seen, the truth she held, was a key that could open doors no one was ready to unlock. And someone was already moving, waiting, knowing that the girl who wouldn't speak had just begun to tell the world what she had seen. The courthouse smelled of polished wood, leather-bound law books, and tension so thick it could have been carved with a knife. Sunlight streamed through the high windows, glinting off brass fixtures, but the brightness did nothing to ease the anxiety in the room. Prosecutor Alina Ruiz sat at her desk, reviewing her notes, while Officer Joel Baxter lingered near the gallery entrance, eyes flicking to the small, almost invisible figure of Mara Ellison, clutching Ranger's leash with a grip tighter than anyone would have expected from a 7-year-old. Today was supposed to be a milestone, the culmination of months of careful investigation, interviews, and evidence gathering. Chuck Redden, the man who had terrorized Willow Bend with his clandestine operations, was finally going to face justice. But nothing in the courthouse was ordinary anymore. Mara had seen the man in the hat, whispered 2 words to Ranger that no adult could understand, and survived a night that had left everyone on edge. And now, sitting in the witness chair, her small body curled slightly, she carried the weight of a secret that could unravel everything. The courtroom doors opened, and the bailiff called the session to order. Redden's lawyer, a slick man with a polished smile and a reputation for exploitation, rose immediately, eyes flicking toward Mara like a hawk assessing prey. "Your Honor," he began, voice smooth, "we understand that a minor is being called to testify today. We respectfully request that the proceedings ensure the child's safety and well-being at all times." Alina nodded, standing. "We agree. That's why Officer Baxter and Ranger are present. Mara will only speak when she's ready, and her testimony is crucial to understanding the full scope of the criminal activity led by Mr. Redden and others involved." Baxter knelt beside Mara, whispering, "You're safe. Just show them what you've already told me, okay? Ranger, with you. I'm with you. No one can hurt you while we're here." Mara nodded, gripping the dog's leash with determination. Her fingers brushed the notebook tucked under her arm, the sketches of stick figures, shadows, and the tall man with the hat. Every line, every detail mattered now. The courtroom had barely settled when Redden entered. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp, scanning the room, calculating. Baxter's jaw tightened. Mara's fingers tightened around Ranger's leash. The tension in the air was palpable. Alina called Mara forward. The girl's small steps echoed against the polished floor. She reached the witness stand, her knees barely reaching the edge of the chair, Ranger at her side. The courtroom seemed to hold its breath, the magnitude of the moment pressing down on every person present. Judge Callahan's voice cut through the silence. "The court will hear the witness." Mara opened her notebook carefully, her small hands trembling slightly. She pointed to the sketches, showing the figures, the tall man, the exchange of the dark object. She traced lines with her finger, lips moving slightly, whispering words only Ranger seemed to comprehend. The dog growled low and warning, teeth bared, eyes locked on Redden. The courtroom audience gasped. Baxter leaned forward, whispering in Mara's ear, "It's okay. You're doing fine, just like we practiced. Show them what you saw." Mara's voice was tiny, quivering, but each word carried a weight no one expected. "He gave orders, not Redden. The tall man with the hat, he told them what to do. He made them leave if they didn't obey. And then he said, if anyone talks about me, they'll come for me." The courtroom erupted into murmurs. Redden's lawyer leapt to his feet, objecting loudly. "Objection! Leading the witness. This is speculation. There is no evidence of this so-called tall man." Alina's eyes narrowed. "Your Honor, the witness has first-hand observation. This is what she saw, this is what she knows, and the court must consider her testimony." Judge Callahan's gavel pounded, restoring order. "The witness may continue." Mara turned to the sketchbook, pointing to a figure wearing the hat, tracing the lines carefully. "Ranger knows him. He tried to control Ranger, but Ranger wouldn't listen. He's dangerous. And he's in the police. He hides, but I saw him." Baxter felt his stomach tighten. He had hoped to protect Mara from the details of corruption within the force, but now her words were spilling into the courtroom with the power of truth. Every eye turned toward the gallery where uniformed officers were seated, tension crackling in the air. Redden's lawyer sputtered, flustered. "Your Honor, this is absurd. There is no evidence of what the child claims. This is a child's imagination, preposterous." Alina stepped forward, voice calm but cutting. "It is not imagination. The witness has provided accurate depictions of the individuals involved in criminal activities linked to Mr. Redden. Her testimony is corroborated by physical evidence and ongoing investigations. The danger to her life is real, and the threat she witnessed is active. This court must acknowledge it." The courtroom was tense, every heartbeat amplified. Mara's small hands trembled, but she did not waver. Ranger pressed against her, low growl rumbling, teeth bared as if he understood the stakes better than anyone. Then the unthinkable happened. One of the officers in the back shifted slightly, whispering to another, eyes darting toward Mara. Baxter's heart stopped. The intruder, the man in the hat, had infiltrated the courtroom. Someone had recognized Mara, and now the danger was closer than ever. Ranger barked sharply, low and warning, lunging slightly, leash tight in Mara's hands. The courtroom went silent. Every eye turned toward the officer, then toward Mara and the dog. Baxter moved instantly, positioning himself between Mara and the potential threat. Mara whispered softly, two words that sent a ripple through Baxter's mind. "No fear." The dog stiffened, growled, and the officer froze, eyes wide, realizing the intensity of the bond between Mara and Ranger. Judge Callahan pounded the gavel. "Order in the court. Officer, step forward and state your business." The intruder did not move. Baxter's jaw tightened. He could see the subtle tension, the poised danger, the calculated patience of someone used to hiding in plain sight. Mara's eyes locked on him, small and defiant, voice barely audible. He's here for me." Redden's lawyer tried to intervene, but Alina cut him off. "Your Honor, the witness is in danger. Immediate protection measures are required. We cannot proceed with the trial without ensuring the safety of the witness. The threat is active." Baxter's hand rested lightly on his weapon, but he didn't draw. He trusted Mara's instinct and the dog. Ranger's growl deepened, vibrating through the floor, a living warning to the intruder. "Do not come closer." The intruder froze, finally retreating to the back of the gallery, hidden in plain sight, disappearing behind the lines of spectators. But the damage was done. The courtroom had seen the tension, the silent acknowledgement of danger, the way a 7-year-old girl and a police dog could command attention and fear from even the most experienced adult. Judge Callahan banged the gavel again. "This court will recess immediately. The safety of the witness is paramount. We will reconvene once protective measures are in place." Baxter crouched beside Mara, whispering, "It's okay. He's gone for now. Ranger's got you, I've got you. Nobody touches you while we're here." Mara hugged Ranger tightly, whispering once more, "No fear." Her small voice carried the weight of survival, courage, and the unspoken knowledge that the man in the hat, the true orchestrator of chaos, was still out there, waiting. Alina approached Baxter, voice low. "Joel, the courtroom saw it all. Mara knows more than anyone could have anticipated. And the intruder, he knows she knows. We're not just protecting a witness anymore. We're protecting the girl who could unravel everything. And he won't stop." Baxter nodded grimly, eyes on Mara and Ranger. "Then we stay close, we move carefully, and we make sure she testifies safely, whatever it takes." The courtroom had broken, order suspended by fear, tension, and the presence of unseen danger. Mara, tiny and trembling but fierce, had survived. But everyone in that room knew one thing. The night was far from over, and the man in the hat would not wait to strike again. And Mara, clutching Ranger, whispering her words of courage, was ready for whatever came next. The courthouse was packed, the tension almost tangible in the air. Every seat in the gallery was filled with journalists, family members, and concerned citizens, all drawn to the drama that had consumed Willow Bend for months. Officers moved discreetly through the aisles, their eyes scanning for any sign of danger. Baxter stayed close to Mara, crouching beside her, keeping Ranger firmly at her side. The trial had already been marked by extraordinary events. Mara's testimony about the tall man in the hat, the subtle but unmistakable threat looming over her, and the unsettling knowledge that the corruption they faced went far deeper than Chuck Redden himself. Alina Ruiz rose to address the court, her gaze steady, voice calm, yet carrying the authority that had earned her respect. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have heard testimony that goes beyond the original charges. The witness, Mara Ellison, has provided us with details that implicate individuals we once believed were above suspicion. Today, we ask that you consider all evidence, all testimony, and the truth that has emerged, no matter how difficult it may be." Mara's small hand trembled slightly as she clutched Ranger's leash, but she did not let go. She could feel the dog's steady presence beneath her, his warm, reassuring body a buffer against the fear thrumming through the courtroom. Her sketchbook rested on her lap, open to the drawings that had terrified and empowered her in equal measure. The jury listened intently as Alina continued, carefully recounting every observation, every threat Mara had witnessed, and every clue that connected the intruder to the criminal operation. She highlighted Mara's courage, her sharp observations, and the bond with Ranger that had protected her during the most dangerous night of her life. Redden's lawyer rose, attempting to discredit Mara's account. "Your Honor, the witness is a child. She has a vivid imagination. There is no physical evidence connecting her statements to the so-called tall man in the hat. We are being asked to convict a man based on the imagination of a 7-year-old. Alina's gaze hardened. "Your Honor, the witness is 7, yes, but she has corroborated her observations through drawings, testimony, and the behavior of a trained police dog. The danger she witnessed was real, and the intruder is still at large, still a threat. To dismiss her account is to ignore reality." Baxter's hand rested on Ranger, who gave a low growl as if reinforcing the prosecutor's words. Mara whispered softly into the dog's fur, "No fear." Ranger nudged her hand gently, reminding her that she had survived everything, and that survival now demanded courage more than ever. The tension in the room escalated as the judge called the jury to deliver their verdict. The jury filed forward, faces pale, hands trembling slightly. The court fell silent, every breath held, every eye on the foreperson as they stood to speak. "Your Honor," the foreperson began, voice shaking slightly, "after careful deliberation, we have reached a verdict." A hush fell over the courtroom. Mara's fingers dug into Ranger's fur, feeling the familiar reassurance, but her heart pounded like a drum in her chest. "For the charges against Chuck Redden," the foreperson paused, eyes meeting those of each juror to ensure unanimity. "We find the defendant guilty on all counts." A collective gasp swept through the courtroom. Some wept openly, relief mingling with disbelief. Alina exhaled slowly, a quiet triumph flashing in her eyes, though her mind was already racing ahead to the implications. Baxter allowed himself a small, tense smile, glancing down at Mara, who was clutching Ranger with wide, amazed eyes. But the courtroom drama was far from over. The real shock came next. "Furthermore," the foreperson continued, voice trembling but firm, "we find that the investigation and testimony provided reveal the presence of an additional, unidentified individual who orchestrated criminal activity within the local law enforcement. The witnesses' accounts and corroborating evidence are sufficient to demand further investigation into this individual's identity and role." A murmur erupted in the courtroom. Whispers of the tall man in the hat spread like wildfire. Mara felt a shiver run down her spine as all eyes seemed to pivot toward her. She tightened her grip on Ranger. Redden's lawyer sputtered, outrage and panic flashing across his face. "Your Honor, this is unprecedented. You cannot issue findings on someone not present. This violates due process." The judge pounded the gavel, restoring order. "The jury is stating the facts as they have determined from the testimony. Further investigation will be conducted. The court recognizes that the witness, Mara Ellison, has provided critical information that must be pursued. The safety of the witness is paramount. Bailiff, ensure that protective measures are enacted immediately." Baxter's eyes scanned the courtroom, noting every officer, every shadow, every person who might pose a threat. His mind was still on the man in the hat, the true orchestrator of the chaos, still lurking somewhere beyond their reach. Alina stepped forward, voice firm. "Mara has shown incredible courage. Her testimony has not only brought a criminal to justice, but has exposed corruption that otherwise might have gone unnoticed. The court must protect her as the key witness in uncovering the truth." Mara, small and trembling but impossibly brave, whispered once more into Ranger's fur, "No fear." The dog leaned against her, a living shield, and she realized then that courage wasn't the absence of fear, it was surviving in spite of it. Baxter rose to his feet, standing beside Mara. "We're not done yet," he murmured. "He's still out there and we'll find him. But today you made everyone see the truth." Outside the courthouse, reporters crowded, cameras flashing, but the focus remained on the small figure of Mara clutching Ranger, a child who had faced unimaginable danger and refused to break. Elena and Baxter guided her through the press, carefully keeping her shielded from anyone who might seek to exploit the moment. As they exited the building, a subtle tension still lingered. Baxter's instincts told him the man in the hat was watching, calculating, waiting for the perfect moment. Mara glanced at Ranger, whispered again, "No fear." The dog pressed his massive head against her chest, as if answering her unspoken question. "Yes, we can face whatever comes next." The courtroom had delivered justice, but the real battle, the pursuit of the man who had orchestrated the chaos, had only just begun. Mara, tiny but indomitable, had survived the storm, revealed the truth, and changed the course of Willow Bend's history forever. And Baxter knew, as he looked at her and the dog, that no intruder, no corrupt officer, no criminal mastermind, would underestimate the courage of a girl who refused to be silent. For Mara, justice was no longer just a word, it was a promise. And as the city breathed a cautious sigh of relief, the shadows beyond the courthouse doors shifted. The man in the hat was out there somewhere, but he now knew one undeniable truth. Mara Ellison would not be intimidated. Ranger would not obey anyone but her. And together, they would face whatever came next. In the end, the courtroom had never seen it coming. A tiny girl, 2 words, 1 police dog, and a story that would haunt the streets of Willow Bend forever.